This presentation is about how language learning can be successful through the integration of extended reality and game-based learning. My name is Stephanie. I firmly believe that education has to change fundamentally and that it is up to us to actively participate in this change. We have to rethink the role of the teacher and reevaluate the purpose of education. We live in the age of digital transformation. It has not only had a tremendous impact on our work and daily lives, but it has also triggered a cultural change we can no longer ignore. However, when we look at what is happening in 21st century schools, it doesn't look like much has changed at all. Let's do a time jump. This is what school looked like in the 19th century. But if we fast forward to 2021, we pretty much see the same situation. The only thing that is different is the fact that technology is used to communicate and hand out worksheets. Of course, you could argue that this is only due to COVID-19, but from my experience, before COVID-19 hit, things weren't much different. Yet, when students leave school, this is what they're faced with in many industries. They are expected to be comfortable with technology and to know how to use it to solve problems for their employers. The skills they need for this aren't just technological. They need to be creative, able to work in a team, to communicate, and to be critical thinkers, and so much more. In a nutshell, everything they do not learn in the current educational systems in most parts of the world. Let's have a look at the foundations of educational systems. In the industrial age, education was about acquiring new knowledge that came from inventions. Young people were trained to be the compliant workers the controlling class needed in order to earn money. However, in the digital age, the world has become very complex and intertwined. New knowledge has to be constructed on a daily basis in order to face current problems. So today is about continuous innovation that requires people to be flexible and creative members of a community. The goal of education as such is still enabling citizens to understand and shape the world. Most school systems just haven't understood that, thus creating an increasing gap between reality and education. So what is learning in the 21st century really about? For me, it is about deep learning. Even though facts are important as a basis for deep learning, they are two-dimensional and can be Googled. Deep learning, on the other hand, is about the transfer of knowledge into something personal, something bigger. So it is three-dimensional and about skills. This includes many of the 21st century skills, like the 4 or 6 C's, media literacy, life and career skills, as well as the importance of learning environments and lifelong learning. In short, a new mindset. Bloom's revised taxonomy illustrates this very well. It shows that the basis of learning are facts that we need to remember and understand. However, we need to apply what we have learned, we have to be able to analyze and evaluate what we know, and thus transfer our knowledge to other areas. By this, we create new things and new ideas. However, in order not to be enslaved by technology, we need to understand that our job is not to use technology at all costs, but that it means asking two questions. What is my pedagogical objective, and how can my students succeed? This will help us move from the enhancement of teaching by using technology to the transformation of learning through the integration of technology in the learning process. Looking back at my experience in teaching, I think that there are key elements that make learning possible: motivation, emotion, interaction, visualization, discovery, and playing. And this is exactly why I believe in the power of extended reality and game-based learning. To make sure we're all on the same page, this is my understanding of the extended reality spectrum. AR is about visualization. Mixed reality allows for greater and haptic interaction, gestures with a HoloLens or an object like the Merge Cube. So this interaction adds some functionality to the real world. VR is about immersion in and varying degrees of interaction with a computer-generated reality in which the user feels physically present. In my opinion, AR will greatly influence our daily lives, but the immersive and interactive qualities of MR and VR are much more interesting for education. Now, how can video games make learning better? It's actually quite simple. Nowadays, learning is very often about passing a test. Therefore, it's tied to a very boring and tedious activity. But what if we changed its form a little and called it a game, and made it look much more fun? The activity in this example is the same. You push buttons in a certain order in order to reach a goal. What is different is the frame in which this happens. which is much more motivating now. So basically, it's about learning design. I really love the hook model that was originally designed for marketing purposes, but works equally well for the educational system. You give learners an incentive to do something, they get a reward that makes them want to learn more, and suddenly they no longer need any kind of extrinsic motivation. It all depends on whether or not the reward is interesting enough. This is why grades don't work, why social rewards as they are used in gamification don't work in the long run, and why personal success, like we know it from good video games, can trigger continuous engagement in learning. Here are a few examples of immersive learning activities. The first one is a virtual exchange scenario. Back in 2012, we couldn't use video games or virtual worlds like Second Life with learners because of privacy and hardware issues. What we could do, though, was immerse French and German learners in a global simulation where they would take on a new identity and mentally move into a European youth village in Brussels to work on projects together over the course of a year. My second example is a project I did with French learners. They transformed a novel into an immersive experience using CoSpace's Edu. Both language and 21st century skills were trained, and we even turned the project into an intercultural experience, meeting the author. The next three examples are activities that I designed for a Franco-German project. This series of activities gradually immerses learners and teachers in new ways of learning and the use of new technologies in an effort to speak English in an authentic learning situation while working with partners from another country. The main focus is oral communication, both synchronous and asynchronous. All activities include reflective feedback loops. The first activity is a 360-degree school tour that each group of learners creates collaboratively for their partners in the other country. So it's basically a personalized experience created by one group of learners for another. The second activity is about heroes. The learners choose their personal heroes from the past and the present before coming up with a cause that is important to them and that might turn them into a hero in the future. They create a virtual museum using all kinds of media they can legally use and audio recordings in English that explain their choices. This time, the students share their individual projects with partners from both countries. The third activity places students from both countries in a virtual environment using VTime, where they will discuss a topic that is relevant to them and that they have previously prepared. Another idea is a project for a physical exchange. Learners learn about historic events that happened in the places where they meet. They learn about storytelling from a professional storyteller, create their own stories in French and German, and become artists by illustrating the stories. Then they work together with music professionals to turn the stories into rap songs. They present their various productions in the form of an interactive AR exhibit in their respective countries, merge cubes, a 360-degree music video, and a virtual museum. Finally, here are a few examples for game-based learning. The first is learning by gaming, for example, playing a video game with a pedagogical objective in mind, or a game that was designed with learning objectives in mind, but that is nothing like what is often but incorrectly referred to as a serious game, because game design principles were not neglected. So it is foremost a game that allows for the flow experience to happen, but it is also a form of task-based learning. The prototype you see here is an escape game. The player is locked into a school. In every classroom, there is a riddle that transports them to a different location where they learn and apply English language skills in order to obtain information that they can trade for the code they need to open the door. The prototype includes 4 topics: directions, animals, New York, and British English versus American English. However, you can of course also use game engines like Minecraft or Minetest for creative gaming. For instance, learners from anywhere in the world can create a sustainable city together, recreate history, and/or make movies in the virtual world. And finally, learners can become game designers and create games about a relevant topic, for example by using voxels. For instance, they can research the current coronavirus and design a jump-and-run game that integrates everything they learned. In summary, there is a lot of untapped potential for extended reality and game-based learning out there. Please feel free to contact me anytime. You can also have a look at my websites or follow me on Twitter, of course.